Welcome to part one of this full stack tutorial where I'll be showing you how I built this Spotify VR player that lets you connect to your Spotify account and play music in web VR. I've also added two links in the description, one for the starter code so you can follow along with me in these tutorials, and another for the full project if you just want to check it out and run the finished project. For the first part, I'll be going over the starter project and how to get it up and running. So let's get started.
All right, so for your starter project, this is what you'll see. As you can tell, this is just a standard React application. You have a source folder um, with assets, some models, a couple files in there, your package.json and your package log.json. We'll take a look at some of the dependencies that we'll be using for this project. As you know, we have Aframe, which is the framework that allows us to build VR web applications, as well as 3JS, which is what Aframe is built on top of, but we take advantage of using the 3JS dependency to do certain things with Aframe. But yeah, all the other dependencies that you see here come pre-installed or predefined when you create a React application. So let's look at the files. The main folder that we're going to be working on is this source folder. If you open up your assets, you should see the assets that we'll be using. This is going to be our glass or our main part of our VR UI, where we'll add all the elements uh, of our Spotify player. You'll have a next button, a pause button, play button, previous button, and then a few Spotify assets that I got from Spotify's dev documentations. If you look at your models, you should have a block.gob file. This is going to be our base for our VR player. Then if you look down, you'll have your standard CSS. You'll have your app.js, which we'll talk about more about the code here in a second. This app test won't really be using that. You have an index CSS, an index.js. This is a login JS file, which I'll also talk about more here in a second. And then the next file we'll take a look at is this world.js file. This is what uh, boots up our A-frame. If we look here, uh, we're importing A-frame and GLTF loader, which is a resource from 3JS, and then we're also importing our block. Here we're using our loader to load the block, and to this we're grabbing an element by ID called block, which will be down here, and we're adding this block model to it. Now, if you look here inside of a return, whenever you're building an A-frame app, you need to have an ascene tag, and then everything inside of that ascene tag will render stuff into your VR world. We have some assets that will be our ground texture and sky texture, and these are just coming from a link. Next, we have our sky, which references that sky texture image here. We set some properties, the rotation, height, width, radius, and so forth for that. We have a plane that serves as our ground texture. We also set some properties here. And then this entity tag is what we add our model to, and we set our position, rotation, and scale of that model. Then if you look down here, we have a camera and a cursor. And the cursor pretty much just lets you click on stuff if you're like using a web browser. To start, I'm just going to start off by installing my dependencies. I'll run npm install, and this will download all my node modules that we'll need. Once they're done installing, we can run our app by saying npm start, and this should start up your application. When you first come here, you'll see uh, this I guess, login page that has Spotify and VR. And as of now, if you click on this button, it should just take you to our VR or metaverse. You can see that wooden block that we have here, and then this is our ground texture, and then our sky are just some mountains. Yeah, this is all you should see when you run the application for the first time, and then we'll just build on top of this, start building our UI and all the other good stuff. Going back to the code, we already took a look at our world. And if we go back to app.js, we have some code. As you can see here, we're creating a constant called token, and we're setting our token based on this function called update token, which passes in some data. So if we take a look, I'm gonna pull up our login. Now open it to this side. So our login page is basically that page that you saw that had the Spotify logo and VR, and then that button. Basically, all we're doing for now is we're using this callback function to pass a string called token. When we click on that button, and it sets our token value to token. And then basically, if our token value isn't an empty string, we display our world. But initially, the token value starts off as an empty string, so that's why we're displaying this login page. So pretty simple, but we're going to add more functionality to it so that you actually log in with your Spotify account in the next steps.